My mother-in-law threw an anniversary party, praising her self-made son while secretly despising me, until my speech shattered the image he built for years.
I, a 33-year-old female, have been married to my husband, a 34-year-old male, for 5 years.
We met at a concert when I was 25, and I really liked how charming and laid back he was. It was what attracted me to him initially. We exchanged numbers and went out for a few dates. Within a few months, we decided that we wanted to be with each other. He was working as an IT professional when I met him, but he had always wanted to be a drummer. He even had a band in college and had kept in touch with his friends. Unfortunately, music gigs hardly ever paid well unless you were famous, and it is just a really unstable and risky career option in general. It is sad, but it is true. So, he stuck to his IT job and would only get together with his bandmates and play small gigs on the weekends as a hobby. I am a registered nurse, which everyone knows is a really taxing job. A year into our relationship, we decided to move in together because the commute from work to his house and then back to my house was becoming too much for me. We have been living together since then, and it has been difficult because only after moving in with my husband did I realize that he is a bit of a slob. So, I constantly have to clean up after him. After a long day working in a hospital, the last thing I want to do after coming back home is clean up after him because he cannot be bothered to. There is also the fact that he is bad with money, so I have to handle all the finances myself and make sure he does not purchase unnecessary crap like he used to when he was a bachelor. He literally had one part of his bedroom occupied by a bunch of his musical instruments that he tried to learn and then gave up midway. I am just thankful that his drum set was in the garage of his bandmate's house where they got together to practice. I made him get rid of a lot of things, sell off some, and basically brought his life under control. He was resistant at first, but I made it very clear that if we were going to be living together, then he had to be clean, and he absolutely had to be responsible with his money. He had already been late with his rent several times and often would not be able to pay his bills on time because of his lifestyle. So, once I moved in with him, all that came to an end. I would like to think that this was a good thing that I did for him, but unfortunately, my mother-in-law does not agree with that. My husband introduced me to his family 6 months into our relationship, and I had expected a really warm welcome since he had only ever had wonderful things to say about his mother. But that was not the case. She was very cold and distant and did not put up any effort to be nice to me at all. She was not cruel to me like a lot of mothers-in-law are, but she was not sweet or enthusiastic about me either. And she had a lot to say about how I was changing everything about her son. She said that her son was being forced to end his youth earlier than expected because he just was not allowed to have fun anymore thanks to his new ball and chain, referring to me. She tried to pass those comments off as jokes, but I knew that she did not like what I was doing. I did not say anything to her because as long as my husband did not have an issue with me changing his lifestyle for the better, I did not care what his mother felt. Since then, we have been civil to each other for the sake of my husband's sanity, but that is all. We do not speak to each other unless we are with family, and even then, we keep it short and try to avoid talking as much as possible. I do not know if my husband has ever picked up on that, and even if he has, he knew better than to interfere. This is the way it has been ever since I started dating him, and we have been okay with it up until a few weeks ago. My uncle recently passed away, and he happened to be really wealthy. He was the CEO of his own company and made a fortune from it. He did not have any wife or kids of his own, so I ended up inheriting half of his wealth while the other half went to my mother. My uncle had been close to me when I was little, and even after that, I kept in touch with him. He would visit during the holidays, and it would always be a laugh riot with him around. So, of course, I did love him, and I was mourning him. I could celebrate the inheritance later because that did not mean as much to me as my uncle did. It is a huge amount and is enough for me to get by comfortably for a really long time, and I would celebrate that later, but first, I needed some time to process my uncle's passing. But my husband, like an insensitive idiot, decided to talk about the money literally just an hour after we returned from the funeral and the reading of his will. He said that now that we were rich, he could finally afford to quit his job and pursue his dream of becoming a drummer full-time. I was already very upset because I had just returned from the funeral for someone I really loved, and instead of consoling me, he decided to start talking about what we could do with the money we had inherited. So, I had a bit of an angry outburst, and I told him that we had not inherited the money, I had, and I would decide what to do with it. Of course, I did intend on using the money for both of us, but at that moment, I ended up saying what I did not really mean out of anger, which led to a huge fight. My husband started accusing me of never letting him have any fun, never supporting his dreams, and always nagging him about money. And now that we finally had a crap load of money, I was still refusing to share that with him, even though for these past years, he had been doing everything he could, keeping his dreams aside for the sake of my happiness. I did not like that at all because firstly, none of this was for the sake of my happiness. If he did not want to change his way of living and become a more responsible person, then he should have just broken up with me, and then he could have continued to live his bachelor lifestyle. But if you are getting into a relationship and having them move in with you, then you should be ready for the responsibilities that come with it. So, we argued about that for about an hour, and there was a lot of shouting and name-calling because both of us were really mad. We did not speak for the next few days, and this was probably our biggest and most serious fight ever. I was hurting, but I did not want to break the ice and talk to him first because whatever I said had been said in a moment of anger, but whatever he had said were his true feelings that he had allowed to build up over the years. However, yesterday, he finally spoke to me in the morning. He said that he was sorry about whatever he had said. I wanted to take back whatever he had said, so I did the same because I was ready to go back to normal now. The silent treatment just does not sit right with me, and besides, it is our wedding anniversary today, so I did not want to be fighting with him on this special day. So, we agreed to stop fighting and that we would discuss this later after we had both thought things through individually, since that seemed like the best way to deal with something as sensitive as this. He also told me that his mother was hosting a dinner in honor of our 5th wedding anniversary today, and even though I did not want to spend my evening with my mother-in-law, I agreed to it because he promised that we would take a trip to the hills really soon that we had been postponing for ages because of work. So, with that in mind, I decided to attend this dinner because it was just one evening after all, and it really could not be that bad. Also, my mother-in-law was putting in an effort to do something nice for the first time, so I thought that I should reciprocate by attending happily. And so, I put on my best clothes, even got my hair blown out, and we left for my mother-in-law's house toward the evening. Once we got there, I noticed that my mother-in-law had actually decorated her house beautifully, and everything looked very elegant. I was quite impressed by the effort she had put in, considering our relationship. When I complimented her on the arrangements she had made, she replied by saying that her son had finally given her a reason to celebrate, so she was pulling out all the stops. I was kind of thrown off by that comment because we had been married for years, and she had never done anything so special for us. I was not pregnant either, so I had no idea what her cryptic remark meant, but I did not have much time to think about it since I had to socialize with the guests as well, and soon forgot about it. After a while, dinner was finally served, but before my husband or I could say anything, my mother-in-law raised a glass, and I obviously thought that she was raising a toast to years of our marriage, but then she went on to say that this toast was for her son, who had worked hard enough to retire early and could finally pursue his dream of being a professional drummer now. She even mentioned how he had done it without any support, looking straight at me, and said that he had risen above the odds and fought against all the people who discouraged him from doing what he wanted to. But despite that, he was finally going to do what he had been born to do, and she was proud of him. I was absolutely lost and could barely make sense of what she was saying, so I looked toward my husband, who was sitting right beside me, and he whispered the truth to me. He said that he told his mother that he planned on quitting his job soon and going back to being a full-time drummer, but he could not tell her that he was going to rely on my inheritance because she would never accept that. So, he told her that he had saved up enough on his own and could finally afford it. I was furious because obviously I had not agreed to any of this yet. I did not want him to go back to music, not just because it was an unstable career, but because he was not good enough to make it on his own. He is an amateur at best, but nowhere near as good as people who can afford to be full-time musicians. And also, just because I have inherited a lot of money does not automatically mean that he can go back to his spendthrift ways. That is not how this works, and I was not going to let him believe that he was in any way entitled to that money. What really stung the most was the comment that his mother had made about me never supporting him because that simply was not true, and both my husband and I knew that I had supported him every step of the way and made him stay on track for his own good and for our future. And my husband had not even bothered to stand up for me when his mother accused me of being unsupportive. So, I decided that I had had enough of their crap, and it was about time that I stood up for myself, and that is what I did. I decided to make a speech of my own, even though my husband was trying to shush me. I stood up, looked right at my mother-in-law, and told her the entire truth, that her son had not worked any harder than I did and would not have been able to afford to retire for another several years at the very least if I was not there to keep him in check, because he was a man-child whose mother had never taught him the value of money. And also, the so-called wealth that she was bragging about was actually money that I had inherited from my uncle, which was now going to be all mine because I was done with her and her son. The family had been shocked enough at my mother-in-law's speech, but mine certainly took the cake because their mouths were actually open. My own parents, who were also present there, were the only ones who were smiling. After saying what I had to say, I left without another word, even though my husband was trying to stop me and calling my name. I took the car and drove to a hotel nearby to clear my mind because after what had happened, I just could not go home and pretend everything was fine again. It has been 2 hours since I arrived, and I finally cooled down a little, but it is still extremely difficult for me to come to terms with what my husband did. I had put up with everything for so long, but I cannot just go on this way anymore. He himself has never been hardworking, and in 5 years, has received an increment only twice because he is just lousy when it comes to work. I get that he has just never been very interested in his job, but he cannot just give up, not when he still has bills to pay. And on top of that, his mother had the audacity to accuse me of being unsupportive when it has always been me who has tried my best to encourage him to follow his passion but reasonably, instead of just diving headfirst into an unstable career and inviting financial trouble for himself. Unlike his mother, who thinks that her son not having fun is the end of the world, I just do not understand why he would even tell his mother these things when we had not even discussed it in the first place. He has been texting me nonstop since I left, but I have not even opened the texts because I really do not want to know what he has to say right now. I am really pissed off about whatever happened today, and I do not think an apology through text is going to fix anything. I just need to know if my anger is justified or if I am overreacting. So, am I the asshole for telling my mother-in-law the truth about her son after she accused me of being unsupportive? I would firstly just like to thank everyone for all the warmth and advice. Really, thanks for taking time out of your day to send me kind messages, and it really does mean a lot to me. I am still staying at the hotel, but I did speak to my husband this morning. It has been 2 days, and I finally thought that it was about time that I answered him. I did not know what to expect, but then I finally read all his texts in the morning before calling him and telling him to wait for me at home before he leaves for work. In his texts, he has just been apologizing again and again for whatever trouble he had stirred and promised me that he had no idea that his mother would do something like this. If he had known, he never would have asked me to attend in the first place. He did not say much else and just kept requesting me to talk to him so that he could explain what happened, and I wanted to know how he could explain any of this, which is why I agreed to meet him. When I went back home to meet him, he explained to me that the evening before he apologized, he had been talking to his mother on the phone, and he had ended up telling her that he just did not want to continue working anymore and he wanted to quit his job to become a drummer, but I was forcing him to work. He did not mention the inheritance because he knew his mother would not like the idea of him living off of my inheritance. So, his mother, true to character, told him that he must do what he wants to and he should not let me dictate the way he lives. She also said that I was the one stopping him from living his life to the fullest, and that sort of got to him because we were already in the middle of a fight, and his mother was just adding fuel to the fire. He said that he would speak to me about it, and if I still opposed his decision to quit his job, then he would leave me, and that made his mother really happy, which is not very surprising. The next day, though, he realized that he was being stupid, and so he apologized to me, but he still had his mother to answer to. And when she called him that evening, he had lied to her to avoid any more conversations about this. He told her that we talked about things and he managed to convince me, and I had agreed only after he had threatened to leave me. His mom was not too happy that we were not actually getting a divorce, but she was glad that he was finally going to be the musician he was born to be, according to her. Then she told him that she would throw the anniversary party for us, and that is how this all happened. So, he lied to his mother just to cover up his own indecisiveness and then lied some more and made me seem like an unsupportive wife just to appease his mother. He saw nothing wrong with just throwing me under the bus to justify his own actions, and even while he was telling me about it, he was trying to make himself seem like a victim who was caught between his mom and his wife. All these years, I had been looking out for this man, and if that meant some tough love in the form of restrictions, then I was willing to do that as well for him. It was only today that I finally realized that I was not a wife at all. I had been parenting him this entire time, and it was eye-opening to say the least. He was not the victim of anything at all. All I was the victim of was marriage to a freaking man-child, and when I finally realized, I decided that I was done and dusted. If he wanted to ruin his own life by quitting his job and becoming a mediocre drummer in a band, then he was welcome to do so, but I was not going to be part of that. I packed some of my things up while he tried to talk to me and beg me to stay, but I was done. I told him that I was not going to baby him anymore, and now he was on his own. He did not have to worry about a nagging wife now and could pursue his dreams and ambitions without me pulling him down. Then I left and blocked him everywhere because I just did not want to hear from him anymore. I am heartbroken right now, but I know that this marriage is now over. I tried really hard to make it work, but unfortunately, I am now well aware that it is never going to work. My husband and I are just fundamentally way too different to be together, and I get that now. He has always been lazy, and that stands true for everything he has tried his hand at. He has been a lousy employee, which is why he is still working for the same salary that he used to years back, while I have made significant progress in my career since then. The only thing that had managed to keep us together this entire time was my love for him and hope that someday he might change. Clearly, that is never going to happen, and I am just so sick of waiting around for him to suddenly realize that I was trying to improve his life and not ruin it. He is on his own now, and so am I. Some of you misogynistic assholes need to realize that not every woman is built the same. I do not understand why people are accusing me of abandoning my husband as soon as I had more money than him. I always earned more than him, so this was never about the money in the first place. If I was actually a gold digger, then why would I be with someone who earns less than I do? And also, I obviously would have shared the money with my husband had he bothered to have a civil discussion with me about it at an appropriate time instead of fighting with me over it when I was grieving. I think that is pretty much just common sense. And for everyone who is saying that I sound like I really was not supportive of his passion for music, I am sorry, but it is easier said than done. Like I said, my husband never bothered to work hard on his skills, and so he was an amateur at best. So, there is just no hope for him to make it as a professional. He can try, but I do not think he wants to put in the time or effort. He really is not that good, and in spite of that, I would go to all his gigs and even paid for some lessons, which he eventually stopped going to because they were doing it all wrong. The instructors were trained professionals, and he is self-taught, so enough said there. I tried my best to be supportive, but it is not an easy task when you are working long hours so you can pay all your bills while your husband plays the fool with his drum set. In the end, despite the occasional waves of negativity that have come my way, the overwhelming support and affection I've encountered here far outweigh it all, making those harsh comments feel insignificant. Still, I believe it's only fair to provide a clearer picture of why our relationship was doomed from the start, and why reconciliation was never an option. His passion for music and his unwavering devotion to his mother consistently took precedence over everything else, including me, and I grew weary of always placing him at the top of my priorities when it was evident that reciprocity was never in the cards. This imbalance wore me down over time, as I poured my energy into nurturing our bond, only to realize it was a one-sided effort. Delving into the reason behind my determination to safeguard that money, it's a deeply personal matter, one I've hesitated to share until now because of its emotional weight. Now in my 30s and still without children, I've long harbored a strong desire to become a parent, a dream my husband was fully aware of. We've been attempting to conceive for what feels like an eternity, facing repeated disappointments that have tested our resolve. In light of these challenges, I had envisioned using the funds for advanced options like in vitro fertilization, or perhaps exploring adoption or surrogacy as viable paths forward. These choices aren't just practical, they represent hope for building the family I've always wanted, a future filled with the joys of parenthood that have eluded us so far. Yet, his focus remained narrowly fixed on his aspirations as a drummer, chasing the glamorous, carefree rockstar existence he enjoyed during his single days, back when his parents bankrolled his extravagant habits without question. He showed no interest in our shared dreams, prioritizing his individual pursuits over the life we were supposed to create together. That realization was the breaking point for me. I couldn't continue in a partnership where my needs and our potential family were perpetually sidelined. So, I've made a clean break. I've updated my contact information, blocking all possible avenues for him to reach out, ensuring a complete disconnection. I've also communicated clearly with our mutual acquaintances, instructing them not to relay any messages from him should he attempt to use them as intermediaries. Our next interaction, if it must happen, will be strictly through legal channels, with my attorney handling everything. It's been some time since I last updated, and in that interval, I've taken decisive steps forward. Just a few days ago, I secured the services of a reputable lawyer, and without delay, I proceeded to file for divorce. The paperwork is en route to him now, marking the official beginning of the end. In a desperate move, he and his mother even showed up at my parents' doorstep, ostensibly to offer apologies and inquire about my whereabouts. But my family, having been privy to the full extent of his betrayals and having personally observed the toxic behavior of my mother-in-law on multiple occasions, didn't hesitate to turn them away firmly. They knew the details of the hurt inflicted, the manipulations, and the lack of genuine remorse until consequences loomed large. This so-called apology strikes me as insincere and overdue, a transparent ploy driven not by regret but by their greed for the inheritance funds they hope to claim. It's crystal clear that their sudden outreach is motivated solely by financial interests, rather than any true desire to make amends or acknowledge the pain they've caused. I've always suspected as much, given how money seemed to underpin so many of their actions throughout our marriage. Fortunately, with the resources at my disposal, I can now engage top-tier legal representation to safeguard my assets. This empowers me to fight effectively, ensuring that what belongs to me by right remains protected from any unwarranted claims. I'm committed to navigating this process with diligence, drawing on the strength I've rediscovered in myself after years of compromise. Looking ahead, while the road to closure might be fraught with challenges, I'm optimistic about emerging stronger, free to pursue the life and family I've envisioned without the shadows of past toxicities. This chapter's conclusion will pave the way for new beginnings, ones where my priorities, my well-being, My dreams of parenthood are finally at the forefront, unencumbered by those who never truly valued them.